Hi everyone, welcome to a new video, and today I come at you live in my new apartment in London. So I have been in full moving mode for the past couple of weeks. So listen, my reading's been okay, but it's not been the best, and I also, now that we come into September, wanted to take time to go over my reading and then I could mentally move on. So yeah, instead of doing monthly wrap-ups, I like to do them seasonally, because I find that in seasons, if I do it that way, my reading doesn't feel like it's being measured. I think it just feels like a flow. So I don't know if that's a cute way of saying it, but also what happens for me is I don't like to time constrain myself into oh, this month I did this. I like to allow myself to have times where I'm reading a lot and then times where I'm not reading maybe as much. So that being said, I did a mid-year wrap up in June. So June, July, August, September, I'm counting as my summer. Now this summer was very demure, very mindful. I wasn't too much, I wasn't too little. I was very much focused on myself this summer, and whatever that might be, whatever that might mean. So I was very taking time for myself, and one of the books, perhaps maybe not on the list, it is actually really provoked that for me, so I'll get into that now. So the first book that I read in summer was Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered, which was actually told to me by a work colleague, because it's based on a podcast, and then the podcast holders had this book. So the podcast is about murder mysteries, and actually it's not even a murder mystery, it's real life cases, and the book is actually very smart now that I look back on it for that reason. So what it is a memoir and it is a work of non-fiction, but it's based around murders. So it'll be okay, from what I remember is there was one chapter about having the need to please people and not really saying no, and it was based around a real life case where I think, and it's been a while, so I'm maybe paraphrasing, where this woman let someone who she didn't know into her car and drove them somewhere. And it came from this issue that I think a lot of people have, where they feel like they have to accommodate others. And obviously that didn't end up too well for her, but it really speaks to the fact that even if something is detrimental or life-threatening in some cases towards you and your goal in life, you will still accommodate it to make the other person happy. So even if you know it's a red flag. So I really like this book. I give it a 4 stars. There was one quote in particular that I really got with, and that was, I think it was Georgia, who I was like, I'm more Georgia than Karen. But anyway, Georgia went to therapy and her therapist said, there's no such thing as motivation, just do what you need to get done. And that, you know, when I listen to audiobooks, so you know when you hear something or read something, you just stop in your tracks. That was it for me, so very much love that. Now, the next book is another self-help non-fiction book, and that was The Courage to Be Disliked. I kept on getting this on TikTok. TikTok was like, The Courage to Be Disliked, The Courage to Be Disliked. And I was like, okay, let's see what it's saying. I read it and I didn't love it. As I've said before, maybe with the exception of Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered, I hate books that are the self-help, self-improvement books that try and be non-fiction. And this is a conversation between the master and the student, and I'm not telling that if I learned anything from the 5 a.m. club, I can't do that, even though I do implement the 5 a.m. club throughout summer, but I'll get into that a little bit later. Okay, so after these 2 books, I wanted to read Coco Mellis, who's an author. I did a video about it, check that out if you want to. And they have 2 books, so The Blue Sisters and Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I read The Blue Sisters and I noticed that I have an issue with books, not an issue, just not a preference, not a liking towards books that deal with aftermath rather than events. And this is about 4 sisters. One sister passes away. That's not a spoiler because it's like at the beginning, and it's about like the other sisters finding their footing. And even though it's very sweet, I give it a 4 stars, so it's obviously good. I kind of found out there that I don't want to know about the aftermath. I watch too many Indian soap operas to deal with that. I need to know about the action. So yeah, sorry to that one. Okay, so the next book I read was Cleopatra and Frankenstein by CoComelon as well. And this one I loved, and the first chapter is genuinely so beautiful. I want to cry every time I think about it. I haven't found anything like literature wise that deals with that kind of like stupid instant love kind of thing, where it's like very old-fashioned Hollywood-esque, and that really did it for me. Genuinely going into this book, I thought it was going to be about obviously Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I was like, how is she going to make these 2 things work together? However, it's about Cleo and Frank, and their couple's name or whatever, it's Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I love this book so much. It's such the perfect adult book if you're looking for an adult book. It deals with adult themes. It deals with multiple perspectives, and I really hate it when it feels like it's spread a bit too thin, but because these people's lives are so interlinked, it feels continuous. And yeah, that was perfect for me. Also, if you haven't noticed, I talk with my hands a lot, and this is the first time you're getting this kind of view, so you're going to see it a lot more. But yeah, genuinely loved Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I give that a 5 stars. So then I started to read like Carrie Bradshaw. So at the beginning of the year, I had a real thing for Sex and the City. I was telling one of my friends I watched 6 seasons of the show, 2 movies, and 2 seasons of the reboot within 3 weeks. And I had a realization, I am a Carrie Bradshaw. Now, did that make me spiral a little bit? Yes, it did. So I was like, I have to read like her. And the first book that I picked up was Fight Night by Miriam Toews, and I give this a 3 stars. Overall, it was fine. It wasn't great. It wasn't good. It was just fine for me. I found the plot interesting. I found the characters okay. There wasn't too much I took away from it. It was just fine and okay. I think maybe if I had a kid, it would have meant more, but it was okay. It was fine. Okay, and then for some reason, I saw Lilly Singh's book, How to Be a Boss, on my bookshelf, and I just remember being 14, watching her videos, and what that made me feel like. So I picked up her next book, which is Be a Triangle by Lilly Singh. Now, I do think the overall message of the book, of the title, sorry, is fine. So the thing is, in essence, be a triangle, because as much as a triangle grows, it keeps the same shape, I guess, if I can do it. So that was fine. However, this book for me had no filling. Like I struggled. So the book was, I think it's 62 pages. Let me check actually, but it's really short. And it just seemed like I didn't get why it was here. I didn't get why we needed a book about this. 112 pages for a book. Yeah, you can do a lot with 112 pages, I'm not even gonna lie. However, this just didn't feel it obviously it was necessary. However, I just think it didn't do anything for me because it was so short. It felt like there was nothing in this. If it was a sandwich, it had no filling, and that's not to be disrespectful. However, why are we writing this? I think the overall message of the title is great. However, I think knowing Lilly Singh, in her personal life, at the point between her first book and her second book, There is so much more that I would love have been written on this. And as literally as someone who grew up, so I'm a fan, I would have loved that. However, it just felt like there was nothing in there. It felt like it was just done for the sake of being done. I need a bit more. So yeah, no, I give that a 2 stars. That one is not for me, but I actually am a fan of Lily Singh, being someone who grew up watching her videos. So I was on the Carrie Bradshaw, I slipped out and then came back into it, and then I read Love Letters by Great Men. So if you watch the movie, the whole first movie, actually Oscar-winning movie in my head, is actually one of the greatest movies I've ever watched. It's probably my favourite movie. I could watch it again and again and again and again. So the whole movie actually is based around this book, and I picked it up, I read it digitally. It's short, it has love letters by men throughout history. So you start really with like Greek philosophers, I want to say. Henry VIII is in there, that threw me off, especially if you know my interest and my reading taste. And then it goes all the way through Napoleon and beyond that. I didn't give this book a rating because I was like, why are we glorifying toxic men, somewhat stalking women when there's a power dynamic? And then there's an age dynamic in a lot of these as well, and I think the author references that at the end, but I was kind of like, not for me, so I didn't give it a rating at all. Okay, the next book really, I think, changed my life, but also just changed me and the spot I was in life at that time. So the way this came into my life, I saw a TikTok clip of Trixie Mattel on a podcast with the group Muna, and Trixie was like, oh, I'm reading the Body Keep Score and it's like turning me out. And Muna were like, oh my god, we've read it. Oh, like big reactions. And then I started to read it, and genuinely, I would recommend this book to anyone. It deals with how trauma really gets you and then keeps you in the loop and in the trap, and how a lot of your habits, your daily habits, your conscious habits, your unconscious habits, your ways of thinking are impacted by certain traumas that you've experienced. And even though this book deals with heavy traumas in the way of incest and PTSD, and they're not applicable to myself, but I am like, oh my god. And it makes you sit down, and for me at least, I really examined how I live my life, how that's informed, how different things I've been through inform things that I wasn't ready about. So I give that 5 stars. It really just literally rocked my world. And then after I read this, I was like, okay, I am in a place now where I am just not even procrastinating, but I am putting everything willingly to my subconscious on hold out of a fear of like failure and everything else, and judgment and shame and blah, blah. So what I did literally the day after finishing this, I deleted every app of my phone, like social media gone. I posted on social media, I'm taking a break. Deleted social media. The only apps I had that I would consider social on my phone were Strava and Goodreads. Started 75 Day Hard. I started 75 Day Hard, which I tried before. I did 30 days in the end, where you do 2 workouts, 1 indoor, 1 outdoor. I put in there that I wake up at 5 a.m. every day. You implement some diet. You for me, I deleted all social media. You drink a gallon of water every day. So I did that, and then I was in a bookstore in a train station, and I saw a book called Dopamine Nation, and I was like, oh, interesting. So yeah, I read this book, learned a little bit more about dopamine. I didn't give this book a rating. I'm not giving books that we read as like scientific or academic research or publishings any ratings. So that's kind of what I'm doing going forward, but I've been doing this year. But I found it interesting. Some of the things were a bit wild, not for me, but overall I kind of got an idea about the addiction to dopamine that some people have and how that can look. Now, after this, because I've got no social media, I'm just out here living like a modern day caveman in my head, but you know, I'll still go to a drive-through if need be. So I spend all day in the summer sun reading, and on my bookshelf since 2019 is Birthday by Meredith Russo. Now, I'm not going to talk about this too much. I loved it. However, I went into Goodreads to leave it a review, and I found out some not so great things about the author and some problematic things, so I just decided not to give it a rating for that reason. Now, next, the 5am Club, which I started in January, I ended up finishing in July, and this book, it was such a labour for me to finish. I couldn't do it. Like, some of the things that I hit, okay, when a self-help book tries to be fiction, I haven't seen it done well, and it's annoying. So yeah, no, I hate like when characters don't have names. I remember studying Of Mice and Men in school, where Curly has a wife and they're referred to as Curly's wife, and I understand that was for like significance, but that really annoyed me, and it annoyed me in this. Why are we having a romance of two people without names and a possible death like threat in a book telling me to wake up early? Like, that just for me was so unnecessary. And yeah, like, this is what I mean like about self-help books. Don't fill up pages for the sake of it. If you have one central message, maybe wait and then you can build upon that. For me, this just blabbed on, unnecessary. The first book, Lily Singh, that, the Triangle book, that, too short. Wait a couple of years to fill up the pages. This one, shut your mouth. It went on so long. I could have, if the author was like, hey, Kaya Binder, here's what to do, da-da, that would have actually been a better way to convey your message, rather than I'm learning about her with no name, him with no name, and now they love each other because they wake up at 5am at the same time every day. Come on. So yeah, I did not love that. That one for me, absolutely not. Sorry about that. But to this day, I wake up at 5am every day, and it's really changed my life. So who's right, who's wrong? I don't know. Okay, so the next two books were The Last Tudor and The Other Queen by Philippa Gregory. I stan Philippa Gregory, the author. She's the reason why I got into reading. She writes non-fiction romances about Tudor and the Cousins' War, the War of the Roses, England. I've been really dragging my feet with this series. I've been reading it for years. I didn't want to finish it because when you finish it, that's it. She writes other books about other time periods, and I love this time period, and I love knowing about these real life people. And now she writes about people who aren't, you know, real, they're all made up. And no, I want to know about these people. So I read The Last Tudor, which is based on the Grey sisters. So Lady Jane Grey was the first Queen of England, kind of plopped on the throne for 9 days. Bless her. It's sad. It is sad. And I read The Last Tudor, and it's based on Lady Jane Grey and her two sisters. And at the time, I gave it 4.5 stars. I felt there was something missing. I felt like I needed more. However, upon reflection, I recently gave it 5 stars because I found myself being like, oh, I love that book so much after. So that's why I changed the opinion on that one. And it also was really informative. Even though I know a lot about that period, I didn't know too much about the Grey sisters. That had always been like kind of a great area for me. So that really helped me in understanding a little bit more about that. Now, the next book is The Other Queen. Anyone who knows me, I love Mary Queen of Scots. I used to watch Reign as a teenager, and that is about Mary Queen of Scots. So this one, is about the imprisonment of Mary Queen of Scots and the dynamic of her and the couple that kind of put in charge of her guardianship. And I think what I really enjoyed about these two books is you kind of are told about the reign of Elizabeth I being like this golden era, but you're not actually confronted with the amount of, well, people she had to kill in order to get that name, but the amount of constant threats on her. And I found that really interesting. Also, I mentioned it more in the video that I made about this, but Philippa Gregory, the reason why I love her is because, okay, you're going to write a book about Mary Queen of Scots. You're probably going to get, you know, the highlights. However, for her to write a book about the dynamic of her with this couple that were put in charge of her guardianship when she was imprisoned is actually so crazy, and it's actually so needed because I never knew about this, but it's also the way she tells it is interesting as hell. So yeah, I love that. So okay, after the Philippa Gregory video, I moved on to reading books until I found a 5 stars, and that video is up. Very chaotic. The first time I did it, I found a 5 stars straight away. The second time, not so as quick. I think I read 8 books before I found a 5 stars. So the first book I read was China Rich Girlfriend, which is the second book in the Crazy Rich Asians series. For me, this one, interesting because it was a new dynamic in the universe, where the first one's based on like how people sit financially and what that brings to the dynamic. This time the dynamics were all switched up. I found that very interesting. However, for me, it was just okay. I gave it a 3 stars. I don't know if the plot was consistently keeping me entertained, so that's why I gave it that rating. And then the next book is The New Life, and this came from a recommendation from a friend. This one for me, I would say 70% I was kind of like, what's going on? The last 30% is where it really kicks in, and I wish we would have kept that energy, but I think it's really important to read because it tells you a lot about the life of gay men and women during a time where being gay was illegal in the UK, and the impacts that people like Oscar Wilde had on the kind of thoughts and also the movement and the backlash that was received from different aspects of the movement. So yeah, I found that really interesting, but like I said, it only really kicked off for me in the last 30%, so I give that 3 stars. Now, the next book is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This one for me had been on my list for a long time. There was a point where these ice hockey romances were really kicking off, and it never happened for me. I think I was on another hype. So I read this and I gave it a 4.5 stars. Okay, I don't read smut. It's not in my wheelhouse. This book is smut heavy, but it's also got a really, really good plot with great things addressed and life lessons to learn. And I give it a 4.5 because I don't know. Give it a 4.5. There was something missing when I gave it a rating, but now looking back, it could have got 5 stars, but it didn't. So it is what it is. Then the next book is A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. I give that a 4 stars. This one I just saw on Goodreads, and there were a lot of people who I share interest with who had read this. Now, the overall concept is something that I like. The story of living in a town that's based on a story is something that I've watched like Once Upon a Time, and that's the same kind of construct. But for me, I wanted this to be a little bit more fleshed out. This could have been really expanded upon. Don't say it needs 6 seasons like Once Upon a Time, but I'm saying it could have done with a bit extra. So that's why I gave it 4 stars. So I recently had someone tell me you move your head a lot to the side when you get into a new sentence or paragraph, and I just noticed I do it. So this side of my neck must be really agile compared to this one. But the next book I read was Felix Ever After. Now this had been on my kind of radar for a long time, and for the sake of this video I was like, I'm going to pick it up. It's probably going to be 5 stars, this for me really solidified that I'm not someone who at this point in my life really is eating up YA coming to age stories. This one was very special, but I'm not in that space. I'm not in that space to really love these, so that's why I gave it 4 stars. Okay, so the next book I read was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. So at this point in the challenge, I had come to a spot where I was like, okay, I've read all the books that I had on my list. I didn't give it 5 stars. Let me read books that I think I am going to give it 5 stars. So I read this. I love Casey McQuiston, Red, White and Royal Blue. And then I read this, and I had the highest of hopes. I listened to Playlist to Read on Spotify, and I listened to the One Last Stop playlist a lot, and it just didn't do it for me. So personally, I hate a plot where the character is stuck in some kind of time warp. So like, if you have to live the same day over and over again, or you are stuck in a place over and over again, I don't like that. And for me, this book deals with one of those kind of stuck somewhere forever and ever, and we don't know why, and we've got to figure out why, and we've got to break this. And that really ruined it for me. For me, it doesn't allow for natural character progression. And I feel like this book had space for the characters to be really fleshed out, and for me they didn't. So that's why I gave it a 1 star, which I've never really given a book a 1 star before. There might be 1 or 2, but for a good, fiction book by a good author to get a 1 star is mad. So is what it is. So at this point, I'm back on social media, a bit earlier than I wanted to be, still doing my self-care, self-growth summer, but it's now September, and I was on, I think, TikTok, maybe YouTube, and I saw a recommendation for the book The Game of Life and How to Play It, which sounds very weird. It sounds very like manipulative and trying to live life like and use people, which I'm really not about. But when I heard more about the book, it's actually written in the early 1900s by a female author, and when I started to read it, it is literally the same book as The Secret, and The Secret came out in the 2000s. So take from that what you will. However, this one just hit me at the right point in time that the lessons really are embedded in my head. I mean, I spoke about this in the video, the 5-star video. I don't like books where it's like, oh, you're ill, that's because your mindset. Because I'm ill at the moment, I have a cold, and I didn't ask for this. My mindset's okay. So I hate when it actually deals with like serious illnesses, and it's like, oh, it's because you don't have the right mindset. Well, how can a 2-year-old have a good or bad mindset? Do you know, it is what it is. So that I disagree with. There's a lot of Christianity symbolism and God this, God that I'm not Christian, I'm religious, but I was like, okay, whatever. However, overall, this book just hit me where it right place, right time, needed kind of thing. So I give that 5 stars, and then I finished the 5-star challenge there. However, one book that I had started was Sadie by Courtney Summers, and this one was big in like 2021. Like, people were like really raving about this, and they were raving about the audiobook, so I started it. It's a little bit of an aftermath book. It's about a missing person on the back of a murder, and I was really hopeful, but the ending of the book left a lot to be desired, so I give it 4 stars. And then at the moment I am reading for a video where I read from my 5-star authors, and that includes Casey McQuiston, because I had this issue where I give her first book 5 stars, The second book, 1 star, and then I moved on to The Pairing, which is her latest release, and then I gave that a 4 stars. The overall concept is actually so nice, of 2 exes who meet again on a tour they had planned around Europe, and okay, for me, the first like 50% is just like fact finding. It switches perspectives, and I really enjoyed the last 50%. The last 50% is told from the person that it's like, I'm still in love with this other person, I'm like hopeless romantic vibes, and maybe that's why I liked it. But I give this a 4 stars, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, that was my reading for this year. I am still reading from my 5-star authors, and it's just a crazy ride, so keep an eye out for that one. But I hope you enjoyed this recap. This is my new setting. I'm still figuring it out. I have lights on still, but I feel like it looks a bit dark on my face. I understand that would be a perfect place to get the sunlight from. However, this is where my desk is, so this is where I'll naturally have enough like space to be videoed, but then also I'm going to be at my computer here, you know, looking at book ratings and looking at this, that, the other. So that's why I am here. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be making a bunch, so keep an eye out for those. But as always, please do like, comment and subscribe. But for now, bye.